Easy to keep completely clean. When you switch from jasmine tea to black tea, or from oolong to pu'ers, you're tasting today's tea, not yesterday's. There's another benefit that's surprisingly practical. A handle always favors one side. The left-handed or right-handed. The gay one doesn't care. As anyone can pick it up. As anyone can learn to use it. No adjustment needed. It's one of those small details that makes the design feel incredibly universal. So is the missing handle a disadvantage? Not at all. It's actually part of what makes the Gawain work so well. So sometimes the smartest design isn't about adding more. It's about knowing what you can remove. Less really can be more. Now let's look at the whole set. Because a Gawain isn't just one piece. It's a three. So the lid, the bowl, and the saucer. And at first, it almost feels unnecessary. Why not make everything into one piece? Now, the answer is simple. Each part has a completely different job. We've already talked about the lid. It keeps in heat. It traps aroma. It filters the leaves. And it helps control the pour. That's already doing a lot. The bowl is the brewing chamber. Notice how wide it is. That wide opening gives the tea leaves plenty of room to expand naturally. As they open, you can actually watch the process happen. You can see the color of the liquor change. You can judge how quickly the leaves are opening. You know exactly when the tea is ready. Nothing is hidden from you. You're not guessing. You're observing. For tea lovers, that's incredibly valuable. Now look at the saucer. People often assume it's just there to make the set look elegant. But it's much more practical than that. The saucer protects your hands from the heat. It gives you a stable base while pouring. It also protects your table from a hot bowl. Something so simple makes the entire experience much more comfortable. Again, one small piece, multiple functions. What's fascinating is that this design hasn't really changed for centuries. Not because nobody tried to improve it, but because it already works remarkably well. When a design solves its problem this efficiently, there isn't much left to change. Over time, people also gave these three pieces symbolic meaning. In traditional Chinese culture, the lid came to represent heavens. The bowl represented humanity. And the saucer represented earth. Together, they became known as the three powers. It's a beautiful cultural interpretation. But here's the important thing. The symbolism came later. The original design was practical. People needed a better way to brew tea. The philosophy followed. The function came first. So here's a question. If we have electric tea makers, smart kettles, automatic brewers, and all kinds of modern equipment, Why do tea professionals still use something this simple? Well, the answer is surprisingly straightforward. A control. A Gawain gives you complete control over every part of the brewing process. You decide the water temperature. You decide how long the tea steeps. You decide when to pour. You watch the leaves open in real time. You adjust every variable yourself. No machine is making those decisions for you. That's especially important when you're working with high-quality tea. A premium tea changes from one infusion to the next. The leaves open gradually. The flavor evolves. Sometimes just 5 extra seconds can completely change the cup. With a machine, you're following its program. With a Gawain, you're responding to the tea itself. And that's a completely different experience. Another reason professionals love the Gawain is its versatility. Think about how many different brewing tools people own. One teapot for black tea, another for green tea, a different one for herbal tea, maybe another for oolongs. A Gawain doesn't need any of that. The same bowl can brew almost every loose leaf tea beautifully. A green tea, a white tea, a yellow tea, a oolongs, a black tea, a pu'er. Well, the technique changes. Well, the tool stays the same. Well, that's incredibly efficient. And maybe that's the biggest lesson this little bowl teaches us. The best tools don't try to do the work for you. So they help you do it better. So the Gawain isn't brewing the tea. You are. It's simply giving you the control to get the very best out of every leaf. Here's something I find really fascinating. The basic design of the Gawain hasn't changed much in over 300 years. The bowl, the lid, the saucer, that's still the standard. But depending on where you go in China, you'll notice small differences. Not because one version is better than another's, but because people drink tea differently. The design adapts to the people using it. Take Sichuan, for example. Tea is part of everyday life there. People sit in tea houses for hours. They're talking with friends, or reading the newspaper, or playing cards, watching people walk by. Tea isn't rushed. It's meant to last. Because of that, their Gawans are usually larger. The walls are thinner. They cool down more quickly, making them comfortable to drink from throughout the day. They're practical, relaxed, made for everyday use. Now travel to Fujian. The atmosphere changes completely. Fujian is famous for oolong tea and gongfu tea brewing. Here, precision matters. People use smaller Gawans. They brew with more leaves and shorter infusions. As every pour is carefully timed, and every second affects the flavor. These Gawans are often a little thicker, helping maintain a stable brewing temperature during multiple infusions. It's a completely different style of tea making. The same tool, different purposes. Well, then there's chaos in. As if you've ever watched a traditional chaos in tea ceremony, you'll notice how deliberate every movement is. Now, nothing is rushed. Nothing is accidental. Well, their Gayawans are designed for consistency. Well, the size stays fairly standard. The balance feels natural in the hand, as everything is focused on producing the same excellent cup again and again. It's almost like using a precision instrument. And then we have modern Taiwans. Taiwan kept the traditional idea but simplified the appearance. Many Taiwanese Gayawans have cleaner lines, softer colors, and a more contemporary style. They're designed to fit naturally into modern homes, offices, and tea studios. A traditional function. Modern aesthetics. It's a great example of how good design evolves without losing its original purpose. Different places, different habits, different styles, but the core design never changes. Because the original idea still works. Now, let's talk about the mistakes almost everyone makes the first time they use a Gawain. And don't worry. If you've done one of these, you're definitely not alone. As I think we've all made them. The first mistake is holding the bowl itself. It's the most natural thing to do. Now you see a bowl, so you grab the bowl. The problem is it's full of boiling water. Within seconds, your fingers start getting hot. Your grip becomes unstable. A pouring suddenly feels awkward. And instead, hold the saucer. That's exactly what it's there for. While the saucer stays much cooler, as it gives you a more secure grip, and pouring becomes much smoother. One small adjustment, a huge difference. While the second mistake is constantly lifting the lid. People are curious. They want to check the leaves. They want to smell the tea. They want to see what's happening inside. But every time you completely remove the lid, heat escapes. Aroma escapes. The brewing environment changes. You don't need to keep opening it. And trust the process. Leave the lid in place. When you're ready to pour, simply slide it slightly forward. That's all you need. The third mistake is opening the lid too far while pouring. I've seen this happen so many times. People lift the lid almost completely off. And then, tea leaves start pouring into the cup. The flow becomes uneven. Sometimes the tea even splashes. Instead, keep the opening small. Just enough space for the tea to flow through. The lid becomes your filter. The leaves stay inside. The pour stays smooth. Once you get the angle right, it feels incredibly natural. As after a little practice, you won't even think about it anymore. And here's the funny part. Most people think using a Gawain is difficult. Honestly, it usually takes less than 10 minutes to learn. After that, it simply feels normal. Like learning to use chopsticks. And at first it seems impossible. So then one day, you don't even notice you're doing it. So why are more and more people outside China starting to use a Gaywin today? As after all, well, we have electric tea makers, automatic brewers, temperature-controlled machines, tea capsules, smart kettles. Technology has made brewing easier than ever. So why go back to something so simple? Because people aren't just looking for convenience anymore. They're looking for a better experience. Today's tea drinkers want to taste what makes each tea unique. They don't want every cup to taste the same. They enjoy experimenting, trying different temperatures, different brewing times, different leaf-to-water ratios. The Gaywin gives them that freedom. Nothing is predetermined, and every cup is your own decision. And people are also so simplifying. And instead of buying 5 different brewing devices, many discover that one simple Gaywin can brew almost everything. Less equipment, less clutter, more flexibility. That's a philosophy many people appreciate today. And then there's something technology can't really replace. The ritual. Making tea with a Gaywin slows you down. For a few minutes, you're not checking your phone. You're not answering emails. You're simply paying attention. Watching the leaves open. Smelling the aroma. Listening to the water pour. It's a surprisingly calming experience. Maybe that's exactly why so many younger tea drinkers are falling in love with it. Not because it's old, but because it offers something modern life often doesn't. A chance to slow down. So here's the biggest takeaway. The Gaywin isn't still around because people are trying to preserve history. It's still around because it's genuinely good design. It solves real problems. It removes unnecessary parts. It gives you more control instead of less. And even after hundreds of years, it still does its job beautifully. That's what timeless design looks like. As if you've never tried brewing with a Gaywin before, I hope you're curious enough to give it a chance. As it might look simple, but sometimes the simplest tools teach us the most. And once you brew a few cups, you'll understand why generations of tea lovers never stopped using it. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. As if you have any questions about tea, brewing techniques, or different kinds of Gaywins, drop them in the chat. I'd love to answer them while we make another cup together. So see you next time, and until then, enjoy your tea. Chapter 3, The Zisha Teapot. Why tea lovers around the world are obsessed with it. More than just a teapot. Today we're talking about one of the most iconic tea tools in China, Zisha Teapot. If you've ever searched for Chinese tea online, you've probably seen these small clay teapots. They don't look flashy. They aren't covered in gold or decorated with colorful patterns. Yet some collectors are willing to spend tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on a single teapot. So what makes them so special? Why do serious tea drinkers love them? Why is Yixing the only place in the world famous for making authentic Zisha? And does a Zisha teapot actually make tea taste better? And today we'll answer all of those questions using history, science, and real demonstrations, without complicated terminology. By the end of this live stream, you'll understand why this small clay teapot has become one of China's greatest cultural treasures. Well, let's begin. The beginning of Zisha, the story of Gong Chun. As every great invention has a beginning. For the Zisha teapot, that story starts over 500 years ago during China's Ming Dynasty. The man most people recognize as the founder of Zisha teapots was named Gong Chun. Before his time, people already brewed tea in porcelain, metal, or ceramic vessels. They worked perfectly well, but they were simply containers. Gong Chun had a different idea. He spent time observing nature, the texture of old tree bark, weathered rocks, mountain forests, and the quiet beauty of simple things. Using local clay from Yixing, he handcrafted a teapot unlike anything people had seen before. It wasn't perfectly smooth. It wasn't heavily decorated. Instead, it felt natural, warm, and alive. People realized that a teapot could be more than something you brewed tea in. It could be a piece of art. It could reflect nature. It could even express the personality of the person who made it. That philosophy has stayed with Zisha for over 5 centuries. Even today, when people buy a handmade Zisha teapot, they're buying something that connects craftsmanship, nature, and daily life. Why only Yixing, the geological secret behind Zisha? Now here's the question almost every international tea lover asks. Why is everyone talking about Yixing? There are plenty of countries with clay. People make pottery all over the world. So why can't other places simply copy Zisha? The answer begins millions of years before humans even existed. Around 300 million years ago, the area we now call Yixing was covered by an ancient sea. Over an incredibly long period of geological change, layers of sediment were compressed, transformed, and enriched with minerals. What eventually formed wasn't ordinary clay. It became a unique mineral-rich rock that would later weather naturally into what we know today as Zisha clay. This clay contains a very unusual combination of minerals, including iron, quartz, and clay minerals, in proportions rarely found elsewhere. But here's what really matters. When fired at high temperatures, authentic Zisha develops an incredibly fine porous structure. Think of it like millions of microscopic air pockets throughout the clay. These tiny pores allow the teapot to breathe. Now that doesn't mean air is flowing through the pot like a sponge. Instead, these microscopic pores help regulate heat, moisture, and aroma during brewing. As a result, tea tends to stay warm longer, aromas develop more fully, and the flavor becomes smoother and more balanced. This is one of the biggest reasons experienced tea drinkers love Zisha. It's not magic. It's materials science. Another fascinating feature is that different layers of the Yixing Mountains produce different kinds of clay. Now, just like different layers of rock produce different gemstones, different depths create different Zisha clays. That's why you'll often hear about three classic types: a purple clay, red clay, and duan clay. Each has its own color, mineral balance, and brewing characteristics. Because the best original ore is limited and tightly protected today, authentic Yixing clay has become increasingly valuable. You can imitate the shape of a Zisha teapot anywhere in the world. But recreating the exact geological material is another story. Well, the three classic types of Zisha clay. Let's make this a simple. As if you're shopping for your first Zisha teapot, these are the three names you'll encounter most often. A purple clay zinni. This is the classic choice. If someone says Zisha teapot, this is usually what they're talking about. Its color ranges from deep brown to dark purple. It's balanced, versatile, and works well with almost every type of tea. A black tea, a oolong tea, a pu'er, or even darker roasted teas. Because it retains heat well while allowing steady airflow, it's often recommended for beginners. If you only own one Zisha teapot, purple clay is probably the safest choice. As you continue using it over the years, the surface gradually develops a soft, natural sheen from handling and brewing tea. Now, tea lovers call this the living finish. The no paint, the no polish, just a time and use. Red clay Juni. The next is red clay. Its color is much brighter, often a rich reddish-orange. This clay is naturally denser than purple clay and usually has finer pores. Because of that, it heats up quickly and captures aroma exceptionally well. The tea with strong floral or fruity fragrances often performs beautifully in red clay. Many premium oolong teas are brewed this way. Authentic Juni is also much rarer than purple clay. It shrinks significantly during firing, making it much harder to produce successfully. That higher difficulty is one reason genuine Juni teapots often cost more. Duan clay's duomani. Finally, we have Duan clay. Its colors range from cream and beige to light yellow. Instead of looking polished or dramatic, it has a calm, earthy appearance. Many people love it simply because it feels warm and natural. Compared with the other two, Duan clay tends to be slightly more breathable. That makes it an excellent choice for lighter teas like green tea, white tea, or lightly oxidized oolongs. Its goal isn't to intensify flavor. It's to preserve freshness and delicacy. So here's the easiest way to remember all three. A purple clay is the all-rounders. Red clay emphasizes aroma. Duan clay highlights freshness. So why do tea lovers use one pot for one tea? This is probably the question I hear most often. Well, why can't I use one Zisha teapot for everything? Technically, you can. Nothing bad will happen. But experienced tea drinkers usually don't. Here's why. Remember those microscopic pores we talked about earlier? Over time, those pores gradually absorb tiny amounts of tea oils and aromatic compounds. Very slowly, the teapot begins developing what many tea lovers call a memory. So imagine cooking garlic in a cast iron pan every day. Later, you decide to make delicate French crepes. Some of those earlier flavors may still influence the new dish. A Zisha teapot works in a similar way. Is if you spend years brewing rich pu'er tea in one pot, then suddenly switch to delicate green tea, some of the stronger aroma may still influence the lighter tea. That's why many enthusiasts dedicate one teapot to one family of teas. The one for oolong, the one for pu'er, the one for black tea. Now this isn't a strict rule. It's simply the best way to preserve each tea's unique character. Why can a Zisha teapot cost hundreds of thousands of dollars? Now let's answer the question everyone is curious about. Why would anyone pay luxury car prices for such a small teapot? Well, the answer comes down to three things. First, rarity. A high-quality original Yixing ore is limited. The best mining areas are heavily protected, and many are no longer actively mined. A great material is becoming increasingly difficult to obtain. The second, craftsmanship. A truly handmade Zisha teapot isn't produced on an assembly line. Every curve, every angle, every lid, every spout, every handle must fit together perfectly. Experienced masters may spend days or even weeks creating a single exceptional piece. That level of precision simply can't be mass-produced. A third, artistic value. The finest Zisha teapots are collected the same way people collect paintings, sculptures, or handcrafted watches. Each reflects the individual style of its maker. Each is unique. As respected artists become more famous, their works often become more valuable over time. But here's something important. An expensive teapot is not automatically a better teapot for everyday tea drinking. The collectors and daily tea drinkers often have completely different goals. For most people, a well-made authentic Zisha teapot with good clay and comfortable usability is all you need. Well, the best teapot isn't necessarily the most expensive one. It's the one you'll actually enjoy using. A common misconceptions about Zisha. Well, let's clear up a few myths. The first, darker color doesn't automatically mean higher quality. The second, older doesn't always mean better. A third, expensive doesn't always mean authentic. The real value comes from genuine Yixing clay, careful craftsmanship, and how well the teapot performs when brewing tea. Always focus on quality before price. A live brewing demonstration. Now let's see everything we've talked about in action. As I'm going to brew an oolong tea using this authentic Yixing purple clay teapot. As the hot water goes in, notice how evenly the teapot warms up. The heat spreads gradually through the clay. Now take a look at the tea. The liquor is bright and clear. The aroma is rich and layered. One thing many tea drinkers notice is how balanced the tea tastes. The clay doesn't add flavor to the tea. Instead, it helps create a more stable brewing environment that allows the tea's natural character to shine. That's why so many tea lovers continue using Zisha after trying it for the first time. It isn't about tradition alone. Oh, it's about the experiences. A great Zisha teapot combines geology, craftsmanship, history, and everyday enjoyment into one simple object. And that's exactly why, after more than 500 years, people around the world are still fascinated by these remarkable little teapots. If you have any questions about Zisha, leave them in the comments. Why does tea have so many rules? Before we start today, I want to ask you a really interesting question. Have you ever watched a traditional Chinese tea ceremony and thought, well, wait, why are there so many steps? Why do they pour only a little tea? Why are the cups so tiny? Why don't they just fill the cup completely? Why do they smell the tea before drinking? Why do they keep changing the water instead of leaving the tea leaves inside? For many people in the Western world, tea is simple. You wake up in the mornings, make some coffee or tea, maybe put a tea bag into hot water, add milk or sugar, and you're ready to go. Oh, it's convenient. It's a casual. It's part of daily life. And honestly, there is nothing wrong with that. But when people first see traditional Chinese tea culture, they often feel like, wow, this looks beautiful, but isn't it a little too complicated? So today, we're going to answer that question. Is Chinese tea culture really complicated? Or does every single little detail actually have a reason behind it? All because here's the thing. A traditional Chinese tea is not about making tea difficult. It's about understanding tea better. In every movement, every tool, every small rule comes from hundreds, sometimes thousands of years of experience. It comes from the three things: science, social manners, and a philosophy about how people enjoy life. So today, we're going to break down the hidden meaning behind these famous tea habits. And I want everyone watching right now to join me. Type one word in the chats, the cup all the way to the top.